Oh man, I have not booted this sucker up in like minimum 10 months, I think. My library just says 2024. Oh, yeesh. That is different from the sentiment that I had in that Fallout video I made. Also, don't look too closely at that screenshot. Anyways, now that I've upgraded my PC specs from this to this, now I can see Starfield at
16 times the detail.
Oh my balls, I can't wait to see 16 times the ugliness of my character. This is it, a Starfield video in the big 2.5, something you don't really see a lot of up until some recent chatter. See, Starfield is in a weird spot right now, and we'll get more into this in an upcoming segment, but when it comes to the gaming industry, a lot of people like to correlate number of players to interest in a game. And honestly, that's pretty spot on. That's a good metric to use for measurements. It makes sense. Less players means less engagement, which typically means less interest in the game. And player numbers are definitely low for this game, especially when compared to other Bethesda games that are much, much older. But the weird thing is, view counts from other content creators, like these on screen now, seem to suggest that there actually is some interest in this game. I personally, unironically think that there is a pretty good level of interest in this game, and whether that's positive or negative is still to be decided, but I think Bethesda is heavily banking on that interest for their next expansion that they just teased. I think that with the right trailers and content that actually catches eyes, this game could finally see a bit of a resurgence, but there's a lot of ifs in that. So in today's video, I want to dive into Starfield. I want to talk about what I think now and what I thought of the game on release and what the overall sentiment is for the game right now. So let's go back to 2023, which, oh my carbondation, that is crazy to say. That's crazy that this came out in 2023. Anyways, I was a day one Starfield player who coughed up a few extra doubloons just to nab myself the deluxe edition, which came with the base game and the first, at the time, untitled DLC. And man, put bluntly, I was in awe. There was definitely some rose-colored tinted glasses glued to my face, but I remember the first 2 weeks of Starfield being magical. It felt really nice to have a brain that was mature enough to fully realize what was going on. Because for previous Bethesda RPGs, I was the most knuckle-dragging moron who could barely connect the pieces to any of the story content, aka I was young. Now I can fully enjoy and appreciate the story, the quest, the new complex systems of ship building and base building. I can actually read and decide which path of skills to go down, and I was loving it. My PC at the time was barely able to run the game, I should mention that, but I still enjoyed what I was being fed. I'm also a little biased because I love anything space related. I mean, hell, these are my top 3 movies easily. And my enjoyment was controversial to say the least. Even before the game came out, people were dropping nuclear reviews on Starfield. I also remember a lot of day one reviews from some of the most vocal people on this platform being way below stellar. The word mediocre doesn't even cover it. But at the time, I genuinely loved the game. I even posted a little cringe and wrote up some keyboard warrior Steam review to try and push back an immovable mass. And there was kind of a deeper reason for that, which we're going to get into right now, because I still full-heartedly believe that, well, now in retrospect, a lot of the issues that people pointed out are actually super valid. Issues that I now agree with that we'll get into. But I wanted to mention that without a doubt, I believe that a lot of hate for this game was bandwagon, unfiltered garbage from people that never even played or purchased the game. They were just meat writing other people's opinions, which, I mean, isn't like uncommon in the gaming sphere, but it is what it is. But I think that definitely sped up the process of steering the narrative for this game in a very negative and apathetic direction. Though I think Starfield would have landed here regardless, but this surge of negativity and almost predatorial hate seemed super targeted at Bethesda, and it was just really weird to witness. But going back to my outlook on the game, my feeling towards Starfield did not age like fine wine, though it didn't turn into sour vinegar either. And I'd like to talk about some of the things that I thought Starfield fell short on, things that in retrospect were not done well, and then we'll circle back to the positives. But just high level things that I think most people can and would agree with. Starting off with my personal biggest gripe is the enemies and enemy variation. Originally, like within the first week, I quickly realized that there's only like 4 different factions variations of enemies to fight, maybe like 5 or 6, including like the DLC. But it's basically just runs down to spacers, pirates, Varun people, heretics, and I mean, dude, like, who cares? I mean, they're all human based. The only way to tell the difference is by what they're wearing and sometimes what they shoot. And I don't really know how Bethesda fumbled with enemy creativity. I think that a lot of it stems from the foundational idea for Starfield, and that being that they wanted Starfield to be more grounded, more gritty, and kind of realistic. But looking at literally anything like but looking at literally any other game that they've made, there's way more enemy variety. You know, let's look at Fallout. Fallout has ghouls, super mutant, Mirelurk. Elder Scrolls has like everything you can think of from a fantasy genre, but Starfield has humans, and it doesn't even have aliens. Like, I'm talking like fully integrated alien race with different variations to fight. You know, the one mission where you fight that weird like 6-legged Tara, whatever the hell, it barely counts, right? Hell, they could have even added like cyborgs or more creative robot based enemies, but it's not here, and that was a huge creative miss and gameplay flop. And if you like picking the evil route within these games, like me with every RPG I play, and for example, you side with the pirates in a flagship 8-hour side quest, then you're basically down to just fighting spacers. I for one said screw that. I've racked up a bounty of this amount that you're seeing on screen from murking pirates left and right because I like to use my loot. I like playing the game. And like half the planets have pirates on them. How boring would it be if I played half of my time just passively wandering around with minimal engagement? Speaking of loot, how is it in Starfield? Well, I didn't think it was bad. It was a fun, novel idea to make loot more RNG based, but it quickly grew kind of old. It really does hurt replayability. It makes you want the more predetermined quest loot that Bethesda games are known for. I think Maddie Plays says it best, but it's a lot more fun replaying Skyrim on a new character and being like, okay, I'm gonna go do this quest for Mehrunes Dagger because I know that's something I want to use and I know that's the quest I can get it from. Not here though. I think the last thing people like to talk about is exploration, both ship and ground exploration. And this is the last thing I want to talk about because it's a good transition into shattered space. But the exploration in Starfield is very weird. You never intentionally just land on a random planet unless you want to build or are looking for specific resources, because all planets are empty. And I define empty as planets that only contain procedurally generated content. But when you're exploring and when you do land somewhere, you're most likely there for a quest. And by that logic, there isn't much deviation, as again, if you're going to aimlessly explore, then you're more or less just keeping your eyes out for pre-generated repetitive markers. Look, what I'm getting at is that it's not natural. It's not curiosity based. It's more like I'm going to that building because I know it will have something, rather than what it should be, which is, ooh, you know, that looks interesting. Maybe there's like a bunker for me to discover, maybe a quest, or maybe like a cool mini boss enemy, you know. Exploration, it's not bad, it's just not great. It's not indicative of natural exploration. It's more like an assembly line. It feels more automated, more A to B, or, you know, I'm just like following a line. But those three overarching issues nicely lead into Starfield's first DLC, Shattered Space, which is now unfortunately known as an insanely colossal failure, which encompassed a slew of different learning lessons and harsh truths that I think and hope hit Bethesda close to home. The experience that Shattered Space aimed to provide was meant to improve on everything I just described above. Not fix, but improve, with the exception of space exploration, as this DLC takes place for the most part in one area. So, with minimal advertisement for this expansion, what did they seek to remediate? Well, the goal of the story was to provide a much deeper and richer RPG element, allowing you to feel like you're actually making impactful decisions. The expansion also promised much better natural quest discovery and better exploration via the map. They wanted the chunk of the map that you start in to feel like, hey, if I wander in this direction, I'll find something worthwhile. And honestly, that's all I got from advertisement. The goal here of Shattered Space was better RPG elements and better map/discovery design. There was kind of like a tertiary kind of ad thing where they're like, oh, you know, look at enemies with jetpacks, you know, whip-de-doo-dah, but you know, whatever. And I'm gonna drop a truth bomb that's not treading any new water here, but I think that if you're up to date on Starfield at all, then you'll know that none of this was fulfilled. Honestly, I remember I logged in day one, I'm looking at the player counts and I'm like, holy shit, nobody bought this. And I personally, I dropped it after like 2 hours of playing. I was so damn bored. bored. And I was like, I don't want to play this. I don't like the color palette. I don't like the enemies. The story is like, holy balls, please stop talking about this serpent thing. Like, come on, man, I just got here and now I'm in like Dialogue City for over an hour. So I and other players did not mess with Starfield. It 100% by every metric underdelivered. So yeah, everything mentioned above, Shattered Space included, are some of the ongoing pain points within Starfield that is pretty agreed upon across the board, which leads nicely into the positives and what the future for this game might hold. So I don't just want to take a colossal dump on this game because I actually enjoyed Starfield. I don't, I'm going to go off the script a little here. I don't understand any sub 5 scores. If you think this game is like a 4 out of 10 or lower, then I know you are needle to vein force feeding that no stupid juice because, well, all the things I said above hit the game hard. It's still enjoyable. I still enjoy it. Like, personally speaking for myself, some of the side quests are less like side quests and whole like 8 to 14 hour long missions that have impactful choices that actually feel like they affect the rest of your playthrough. The base game, Starfield itself, is pretty good. It's no 10 out of 10, you know, looking in retrospect, but I'd probably give base game Starfield like a 7 out of 10 above average. The shipbuilding is super in-depth and complex, and it's really fun to customize the interior. And while I'm not deep into it, I know that this is the most complex base building functionality that Bethesda has ever made in their games. The main story holds my attention, not to mention it's really fun planet hopping when you're actually going to a planet for objectives, and there's good variation in what the planets look like. And going through the story blends a whole ton of genres like Wild West, space pirates, a forgotten ship that acts like a time vessel, visiting old Earth, a freaking gambling ring where you bet on survivors, and a super cool megacorp that you can infiltrate and decide the fate of. There are things in Starfield that are very enjoyable that it gets right. Gunplay is good in this game. My script says fantastic, but I'm going to say good. It's probably the best out of all the RPGs that they made. The skills are fun, albeit nothing crazy. Ship battles suck. I'll just say that. But boarding a ship is so dope. I think it's so cool that you can be an actual pirate and board other ships. So yeah, I mean, those are the highlights for me. Even the cities feel much more lively and lived in. Anyways, yeah, I mean, I enjoy the game. I really like it, albeit it has those issues above. But the reason I mentioned the issues first and then my positives is because I wanted to lead into the future of Starfield, as just recently there's been a lot of chatter on the future of this game, and like real chatter, not like leaks, but like Bethesda officially coming out. A prospective new story-driven expansion was just teased, and I'm hoping it'll deliver tenfold, like over deliver, because if Todd wants to keep funding this bad lad for the next, years to come, like he said, then it's gonna need a heavy hitter. And I'm not talking like the one out. I mean, this needs to be a banger or it's scrap. There's been some leaks about ship traversal improvements coming, which I think would significantly help the fluidity of this game. Supposedly there's some other new small systems that will join alongside the expansion, but those are yet to be known. I know a few months ago they released a huge patch that contained a bunch of bug fixes and optimization improvements, seemingly laying the groundwork for something big to come to the game. What I'm hoping for is one big hoorah of creativity and a very well-crafted RPG story with rewarding exploration, because that is, in an essence, what I look for in Bethesda games, me personally. And like I said earlier, there's plenty of eyes on Starfield. Whether those are eyes of interest or not is still to be discovered, but for me personally, I know I'll be jumping back in, probably with a few mods on hand, ready to tear up whatever space has to offer. So yeah, I made this because there's been a lot of chatter on Starfield, a lot of conversation around it. I really want to hear what people, if people do watch this, what you thought of Starfield. I know a lot of people hated it, and I also know a lot of people now coming to it in 2025 are saying like, oh, it's better, it's blah 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 blah. I personally, I don't think it's changed that much, but yeah, I'm curious down below if you have anything to say. I'd love to hear about it. All right, well, thanks for watching. I'll see you again next week.